Today's teaching is one I look forward to and is special because it's fun. It's fun to give away money. And it's fun for me as a former professor to give away money for educational work. We began the essay contest 4 years ago, and we hosted our first winners in June of 2023. And in all, so far, we've given away about $10,000. I don't remember who came up with the idea of the essay contest, but I do remember 15 of us or so were sitting around in a neighbor's backyard long before we organized ourselves into a nonprofit. Back then, we usually passed around the hat to come up with $50 if we were lucky to buy new flyers. But as soon as the idea of an essay contest was broached, it attracted universal support. The essay contest is kind of the signal activity of our work. It's designed to make people think, to have them do some research, and to turn that research into a public declaration of support or opposition to changing the name of the city. In fact, from the beginning, we made the contest open-ended. We asked, do you support or do you oppose changing the name of the city? But through the years, the funny thing is that we have never received an essay opposing the name change. There's lots of chatter online in opposition, of course, and every once in a while someone will come and yell in your face in opposition to changing the name. But I have to say that no one has ever given me a logical reason for keeping this name. There's emotion, but not a lot of thought. Right now, we're test marketing the Northern Pomo name for this place, which is Noyo Bida, which means the fishing place. And we're going to see how people react to that. Originally, we were told that Native people didn't want their language used to name a place that was stolen from them. But as we talked to more and more, and that was, that made a lot of sense. But as we talked to more and more Native people, we found that that wasn't true. And so far, Sherwood Valley Band and Round Valley Band of Pomo have endorsed the name change and support using an indigenous name. So we've been working on the essay contest, and it works like this. We announce the prompt and the rules in January. We open for submissions in February and close the contest at the end of March. The submissions come in and the author's name is removed, and they're sent on to our panel of judges, who then grade the essays using a grading rubric from the Modern Language Association. Winners are announced and receive their prizes in June. I'm going to share with you the names of past winners. Some of you who have any connection to the local schools may recognize them. Last year, the winner was Cooper Robles. In 2024, the winners were Darwin Marroquin and Abilene Campstra. And back in 2023, the winners were Carmen Velasquez and Joe Erickson. This year's winners are Rowan Carr and Simon Peter. To ensure a fair contest, we draw our 3 judges from the local writing community. They may have opinions about the name change, but that's not the most important thing. They are not associated with the Noyo Bida Truth Project. They don't serve on the board. They don't serve on committees. They only work as judges. The 3 judges this year were Margaret Ryder, Eva Mee, and Catherine Marshall, each chosen for their skills and their stature in the community. All are local residents. Margaret Reiter is a retired attorney formerly serving in the office of the California State Attorney General. Eva Mee is an advocate for indigenous rights. Catherine Marshall is a writer and a published author. Each of them wanted to be here this afternoon, but fate intervened in a dramatic way. Eva Mee's mother-in-law died this past week, and Eva is attending her memorial service today. Margaret's sister broke her hip recently, and Margaret is flying back to Iowa today to aid in her recovery. Happily, nothing happened to Catherine Marshall. Don't walk under any ladders. And Catherine is here with us. And I'd like to ask her to come up to the microphone and say a few words about how the essay contest worked from her point of view and what she thought about the whole experience.
So thank you, Phil. This opportunity to participate as a judge for the essay contest, I really appreciated. It was really interesting and fun. I'm a writer, and I serve on the board of the Writers of the Mendocino Coast, which is your local writing club. And I'm also, my full career has been in working with nonprofits. So if you've ever run a nonprofit or worked with them, you have to write a lot of essays, white papers, grant proposals, and everything. And I really value the ability of an essay to be able to make the case for support and really change minds and improve the community. So these two winning essays really exceeded that task brilliantly. I really appreciated what I read. The second place essay reflects on literature such as braiding grass, and these reflections really help the reader understand that blind loyalty to the flag or really tradition stemming from recent history doesn't really honor the land and the legacy of the indigenous people. Our first place essay was unique in that it touched on how the lack of recognition of what indigenous people endured and accomplished affects all of us today. The author addressed how our young people feel about the name when representing their town and their school, when they do sports and other community things, and how visitors might react when they discover what Braxton Bragg represented. The writing also respectfully addressed the concerns of those who are opposed to the name change and effectively demonstrated the benefits to the community that would come from making that change. So it was a very tightly done essay. So I just thank you for the privilege of being able to review these works. And in reading these, I just feel more optimistic and hope that these essays can be used to spark the change that we know is necessary.
And our second prize winner is a writer and a musician with a passion for freedom, community, and ancestral connection. He is Simon Peter. Simon enjoys a simple life growing food and sacred cactus, building with cob, and creating music. And they add, quote, "It is an honor to be recognized by the Noyo Bida Truth Project."
My essay is called "Truth Will Set You Free," honoring the story of Noyo Bida. Throughout my life, growing up in the city currently known as Fort Bragg, I have heard debate many times regarding the name of the city and if it should be changed. Many passionate beliefs exist on both sides of this argument, but amidst elevated emotions, there lies an undeniable true story of this land and the people who called it home before white settlers murdered most of them. I am writing this essay to illustrate and emphasize how returning the original indigenous name of Noyo Bida to this place is the first step toward accountability and restitution for the atrocities of indigenous genocide and erasure. Spending time with my Anishinaabe family in Michigan over the past few years has piqued my interest in indigenous history and tradition. When I began researching indigenous history in California, I was appalled to learn the immoral and evil actions indigenous people endured from early settlers throughout the state. Public school curriculum only gave me a fairy tale version of life in Catholic missions, failing to include the true story of the genocide which took place. As an adult, I have read numerous accounts of entire communities being slaughtered, people being hunted like animals, and traditional ways of life being systematically and strategically eradicated. Books like The Way We Lived by Malcolm Margolin provide excellent firsthand documentation of the indigenous experience before, during, and after European settlers began invading California. After the truth emerged from the shadows, I began to understand the fiery passion behind changing the name of Fort Bragg to the original indigenous name, Noyo Bida. However, many people feel attached to this city being named after a Confederate general who was never even stationed here. There is not any heritage or true history represented by this name. Some choose this as an easy excuse to continue denying the existence of the original inhabitants and caretakers of this land. In the book, The Way We Lived, Malcolm Margolin compiles a multitude of firsthand stories from indigenous people throughout California. The following quote is one woman's declaration of how sharing true stories of persecution can instill change in future generations. Quote, "The truth will set you free. We can talk about the Holocaust. We can talk about all the things that happened other places, but you can't talk about what happened to the Indians. Our kids know it. We tell our kids. We all know it. And the hurt is still here. So how do you get rid of that hurt? The way to get rid of the hurt is to put it out. Let everybody know, and after a while it will become history. The truth will set you free, and our kids won't be so angry. Vivian Hellstone, Yurok," end quote. This quote resonated heavily with me, and I see how it applies in the community of Fort Bragg. Many people are ashamed to look back at the horrors committed against Pomo people, but it is time we begin accepting accountability for actions taken by colonizers instead of perpetuating indigenous erasure. In another passage from The Way We Lived, a Pomo woman shares her story of attending boarding school in Covelo as a child, how she was beaten for speaking her language, and how she chose not to pass on indigenous wisdom to her children because of this experience. Quote, "I was 11 years old when I went to Covelo, and every night I cried, and then I'd lay awake and think and think and think. I'd think to myself, if I ever get married and have children, I'll never teach them the language or all the Indian things that I know. I'll never teach them that. I don't want my children to be treated like they treated me. That's the way I raise my children. Elsie Allen, Pomo," end quote. Reading this account is honestly heartbreaking. To think of how many children lost access to ancestral wisdom to protect them from persecution by colonizers is a travesty. How can anyone with love in their heart argue against taking any and all action toward reparation and healing of people subjected to this cultural genocide? In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Kimmerer examines how embracing indigenous ways of being can lead to an expanded ecological consciousness through the acknowledgement of our reciprocal relationship with all life on Earth. One chapter which resonated with me centers around the Pledge of Allegiance, highlighting how teaching our children to blindly regurgitate love for country neglects to include any modicum of respect for the actual land and beings with which we coexist. Quote, "As I grew to understand the gifts of the earth, I couldn't understand how love of country could omit recognition of the actual country itself. The only promise it requires is to a flag. What of the promises to each other and to the land? What would it be like to be raised on gratitude, to speak to the natural world as a member of the democracy of species, to raise a pledge of interdependence? No declarations of political loyalty are required." I feel like this is like dipping. I'm sorry. It's just, I feel like I see it going lower. No declarations of political loyalty are required, just a response to the repeated question, can we agree to be grateful for all that is given? End quote. This passage illustrates how blind loyalty to a flag, a symbol, or city name will never truly offer recognition, gratitude, or love for the land we call home. Returning the name of the city to the original indigenous name, Noyo Bida, would directly honor and highlight the gratitude and respect Pomo peoples hold for this ancestral fishing site. In the same chapter of Braiding Sweetgrass, the author details a Thanksgiving address tradition still carried by a small indigenous school in the Onondaga Nation territory. In the following passage, she highlights the contrast between holding respect for a nation and honoring the land. Quote, "In the Thanksgiving address, I hear respect toward all our non-human relatives, not one political entity, but to all of life. What happens to nationalism, to political boundaries, when allegiance lies with winds and waters that know no boundaries, that cannot be bought or sold?" End quote. This statement emphasizes how honoring the indigenous name for an area holds the potential to dissolve allegiance to a false name. Giving thanks for sacred fish and water highlights and honors the love and abundance given by our earth. A main theme of Braiding Sweetgrass is how all indigenous cultures share a commonality of living in reciprocity with the land and all forms of life. It is our moral responsibility as humans to carry forward this ancient way of being, to teach and share this practice for future generations. Quote, "Cultures of gratitude must also be cultures of reciprocity. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am bound to support its life. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning a gift in kind. An integral part of a human's education is to know these duties and how to perform them." End quote. There is no better path to begin living in reciprocity with the land, the river, the ocean, the fish, the seaweed, than to use the name given to the Pomo by the land itself. The first step toward healing this place and our human race is to take accountability and responsibility for the damage we have done to our planet and each other. In a later passage in Braiding Sweetgrass, the author tells the story of the Nechesney people in the Salmon River Valley on the Oregon coast. The Nechesney held yearly ceremonies to welcome salmon to their river, where they practiced sustainable fishing methods allowing salmon to thrive. The estuary where salmon were fished for generations was destroyed by dikes and dams settlers built to extend farming pastures. Kimmerer explores the power of ceremony in reclaiming power and carrying forward truth in the face of adversity. Quote, "Ceremony focuses attention so that attention becomes intention. If you stand together and profess a thing before your community, it holds you accountable. In many indigenous communities, the hems of our ceremonial robes have been unraveled by time and history, but the fabric remains strong. Many indigenous traditions still recognize the place of ceremony. In a colonist society, the ceremonies that endure are not about land. They're about family and culture, values that are transportable from the old country. Ceremonies for the land no doubt existed there, but it seems they did not survive emigration in any substantial way. I think there is wisdom in regenerating them here as a means to form bonds with this land." End quote. It is with this intention I call out the true name of Noyo Bida, to establish ceremony honoring the life and story of this sacred place. The truth will set us free. Thank you. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.